in Waldorf, it's everybody sort of thinks that rhythm has to do with what day you paint and what day you're baking, and yeah, that's about this much of it. The big picture has to do with meals, what time you're going to bed, what time you're getting up, when you're doing those main lessons, how your planning was, when you're going for walks. There's so much more to rhythm than about when you're painting. What is rhythm? Why is it important? Listen, have you ever gotten up in the morning and felt like you were shot out of a cannon? Like the children are like already talking to you and trying to demand things of you, and you don't know what you're eating for breakfast, and that makes it worse. And then there's tantrums that happen before breakfast. You're trying to get breakfast on the table, you're hunting for cereal, and you realize you have no milk. Mm-hmm. Or you decide you're gonna make toast and you realize you have no bread, or smoothies and you realize you have no fruit. And then you realize that, oh my gosh, like the whole day feels like that. And then it just feels like one chaotic conundrum after another.
Yeah.
Doesn't feel good.
No.
It actually sucks really bad. Really
and
bad.
Then if you let it go on too long, then it's this grind and life feels really hopeless.
It does. And you feel like, why did I become a parent? Or you start to fight with your partner because you don't feel like them going off to work and you staying home, like you don't feel like they're helping, it's because your thinking needs to be adjusted. So we're going to really work on this concept that rhythm is tied to you. Rhythm, it isn't a schedule. It's like flow. It's like a river. And I was thinking about this this concept one day, and I thought about, when you're in an inner tube. Like if you ever went tubing as a kid down a brook or a river. Mm-hmm. We lived in Idaho, so I don't know if anybody else has that experience, but that we had that experience, right? Yes. So you're like inner tubing, and when your feet are up, you're just flowing.
Yeah,
it's flowing, and you might hit the side of the embankment, but you'll bounce off because you're in an inner tube. Mm-hmm. But if you stand up, guess what? Not flowing anymore.
No,
it comes to a grinding halt. And that's really kind of how rhythm is. So the first thing that we tell people to do when you're trying to sort out your rhythm is, one, do not look at all the pretty rhythm charts on Pinterest and on Instagram and decide that you're just going to make it based on somebody else's rhythm. Don't do that, because you will be like really angry at yourself. Yeah. You'll wonder, why is this not working? Why can I not make this work? And why does it, work for Susie Q, but I suck at it, kind of thing. Yeah. So the first thing that we want you to do is apply the actual rhythm chart. So on this page, you have an actual rhythm chart that you can print out. It's also in Planning for Peace. The one in Planning for Peace is slightly prettier probably than the one that's on this page, or maybe not, maybe they're both the same. But you want to print out the actual rhythm chart. I highly recommend you and your partner do it. Even if your partner goes off to work every day. Even if, he or she writes like leaving at 7:30 and then writes again back home at 5:30 or whatever it is. The reason being, when we understand where our time goes, both of us, it's a game changer. Because what you're going to do with that actual rhythm chart is you're going to write down every single thing you do. And I know that sounds really tedious, and you're thinking, Melissa, those boxes are really small. How am I going to write that small? Get like the 005 pen or a really good mechanical pencil and carry it with you. Like fold the paper, stick it in your pocket and carry it with you. It's ideal if you can do all 7 days, but if you could only get through 3 days, that's great. 3 days is better than nothing. 3 days will tell you a lot. So you're going to track everything you do, like what time you got up, what time you started breakfast, and not just like time stamping it like that, but got up, 6:15, showered, rode my exercise bike, made breakfast for kids, and write them all down. Stop for 20 minutes to check Facebook, got lost on Instagram, got on the phone with my mother, all the things you want to write them down. What you will find after even just 3 days, again, 7 is ideal, but even after 3 days, is you will find where your time really goes. And it doesn't go where we think it goes.
No, it doesn't.
Because the mind lies, a lot. How often have you sat down and gone, what the heck? It's time to make dinner. I swear I just made lunch. and you don't know where your afternoon went, or you know, you just, I don't know. Have you had some? I know you've had some experiences where you're like, and you're like the time cop. Like, this man is the time cop. I can get nothing over on him. I'm like, I want to do all 6 of these things today, and he goes, nope, you can only do 2. He's the time cop.
There's rush hour in 2 hours, and it's going to take 45 minutes to get over there, and then it's going to probably take 45, and then it's like, you only have time to do that.
Yes, and I usually say to him, honey, you need to think more flexibly than that. He's like, okay, but you're still only doing 2.
It's like, does anything to do with flexibility. But.
I think it has to do with flexibility. I think what's really important here is that we often think that we have command of our time, and we don't. And, you know, I realize when you're in the thick of it and the kids are really little, you know, maybe you've got really little ones and you're still in the throes of changing diapers and breastfeeding. I get it. We have 5 children. I did that with all of them. All of them. We co-slept and we, you know, cloth diapered. We did all the things, all the attachment parenting things we did. And I'm thinking it paid off, like, it's big time. Oh, yeah. But when we were in those spaces, we had to come up with ways to actually get stuff done. And it was from those days that this stuff was born. This idea of, what does your rhythm really look like? Yeah. Because that's what you should be basing that pretty rhythm chart on. It should not be based on your neighbors or your friend who's been doing Waldorf for 15 years and she seems like she's got it all together, which I'll tell you a secret, she doesn't. But you shouldn't base it on anybody's but your own. Let's analyze it. I love analyzing the data. Like, I love looking at like, because most of the time by day 3 you're going to look at it and go, oh, I see really a pillar of understanding what your habits are. And when you understand your habits, then you can have like a beautifully put together life, because you get to realize you're in control. And we really want to help you with that. So, actual rhythm chart aside, let's move on. So the next thing would be starting your day. So if you are the shot out of a cannon mom, which that's the mom that waits until her children wake her up, which I've been there. I haven't always been an early morning person. But I realized that when I got up before my kids, like, crap actually happened that day. Mm-hmm. Like, I got things done. There was less fighting. There's, you know, much less contention between me and him, me and like anybody, because I'm not shot out of a cannon. That shot out of a cannon feeling has you in fight or flight, like before your feet hit the ground. Mm-hmm. And you don't want to start your day in fight or flight. That messes with your cortisol levels. It messes with your stress. Like, you're in a space of the needing to take something first thing in the morning to calm yourself down, or you're already yelling before you step out of bed. So if you're a parent that's really trying to not yell, or you're trying to figure out how to wake up more peacefully, or you put out intentions every night before you go to bed, I'm going to wake up, it's going to be so much better, and I'm not going to yell tomorrow, and I'm not going to swear at my kids, and I'm not going to do all these things, but you still do, I'm going to tell you, get up before your kids. Now, you might say to me, my kids are getting up at 4 a.m., so I'm going to tell you a little secret. That is not morning. That is, let's go back to bed. And I know you might be thinking, lady, you're crazy. I can't get them to go back to bed. Remember, we have 5 children, and they haven't all been the same. Like, they've all been blessed with like many differences. And sometimes they want to get up crazy early, but you know, you just go, come and snuggle with mommy. Let's just lay back down and go back to sleep. Rubbing their back. But you have to remember that you are in charge. Doesn't mean they're authoritarian. You know, remember I said we were attached parents, but it does mean that you hold authority. That means that they listen. So if you're listening to this now and you're already arguing with me, there's bigger things at play. But I promise you, as we walk through all these pieces, if you will do what we say, you will have a crazy change in your life and in your home and how it feels. So what do you do when you get up before your children? Like, what do you do with those hours? I know what we do.
We exercise or meditate or study things or
pray. We prepare for the day. Get centered. We do stuff that couples do first thing in the morning when there's nobody around. Though those times when you are up before your children and you spend the time to get centered, that becomes, that's like my time that I jealously guard that. In fact, I'm always like, how much earlier can I get up so that I can have more time? And truly, we set a time for our day to start with our children. And of course, when they're teeny tiny, this is not happening. But as they are old enough to understand a little bit about time, or a little bit about what time you should get up in the morning, by 5, 6, 7, you can say, you are welcome to play in your room, but we're going to start the day at, and then 7, 8, whichever time works good for you. Some families, mom or dad can get up at 5, and they can start the day at 6, and that still works for them. But you'll want to sort of play around with what works for your family, but don't hesitate to make some hard and fast rules that are like, this is what we do. For many years, for us, it was our day didn't start till 8.
Yeah.
And that was when we had all of our kids at home. And yes, I mean, we had them from tiny all the way up to teenagers. And what we did was we just said, this is when it starts. And that's, there are those great clocks that you can use that tell the kids when it's time to get up. But we just would say, you can hang out in your room and you can play in the playroom. We had a playroom at the time. But this is quiet time. And at first your kids are gonna be like, why do you need quiet time? But then you can talk about, like, remember when I yelled the other day and I didn't show up my best? You wouldn't say this to a 3-year-old. You could definitely say this to a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 15-year-old. Remember when I lost it at you the other day? Well, I don't want to do that anymore. I know that I really need to have time to be mommy or daddy in order for me to then come and be with you. And so when you can take it from that space rather than feeling like you're chaotic all the time, your children start to respect it. And
yes.
Because it's a non-negotiable.
Yeah.
It's not like it's something that
it's a boundary that they know exists.
Exactly. And we need to have boundaries. And I think it's super healthy for children to have boundaries and for them to know what yours are, and you respecting their boundaries as well. Does not mean you don't tend to a child that absolutely needs it, that you don't, take care of those things. But 9 times out of 10, we use those as excuses for not actually doing the work of the real parenting and the real boundaries. And so if you're really struggling and you've tried some of these things, come to office hours. Let's talk them through so that we can really help you start your day well. And I will say, if you just had a brand new baby, I am absolutely not suggesting that for the next month or 2 that you should get up before your children. What I am suggesting is you get the time that you need for sleep, and that you really work to have a good sleep rhythm in your home. I think that sleep is so important too, in that we often have the sleep rhythm mixed up. Like, we don't realize that, your children shouldn't be up till 10 o'clock. They really shouldn't even be up till 8 o'clock. They really shouldn't be up till 8 o'clock. When they're young, they need sleep. And what tends to happen is that we miss the sleep window.
Yeah, so then the second wind comes in and then you're in for some trouble.
Absolutely. That's the time to go for a walk. That's the time to really get those wiggles out. Put your child on the treadmill, do something to really get those wiggles out. But really, the best place to be is to not miss a sleep window.
Yes. Because
that sleep window is sooner than you think it is. So one of the things that I teach a lot is that that dinner is the runway for bedtime. So what does that mean? That means that dinner starts the bedtime cycle. So if you're not having dinner until 8 o'clock at night, you're not getting in bed until 10.
No.
And they've had a second wind and everything's all kerfuffled and a mess.
Woohoo.
But if you're having dinner at 5, between 5 and 6, then that runway for bed is short. We also don't do baths after dinner. We do baths before dinner or earlier in the day. What we found with 5 children is that baths often make them more ramped up. They don't do that to me, because there's something about, like, as adults, we're like, I'm just going to take a shower. I'm going to relax. That's not what children do in the tub. You know it.
Like, let's play with toys.
They get crazy in the tub. Where's the bath crayons? Where's the...
Yes.
So, and then if you've got a sibling in the tub too, it's crazy train. So you've got them fighting and all kinds of things. So do not do baths after dinner. What we tend to do is we do showers beforehand or baths beforehand. That's a great thing for them to be doing while you're making dinner. Or, you know, you could do it in the afternoon before you start dinner and then maybe have some quiet or, you know, have them look at books or do some quiet play while you're making dinner. But then when you have dinner, after dinner, you know, when they were younger and a lot messier than they are now, I would have a wet washcloth right at the table. So then I'm just wiping them down and they get a good like sponge bath before they then head off to bed. Then you don't send them off to play. No, they go right to brushing their teeth, putting on their PJs, and getting that sleep cycle going. So that if they are under, you know, under 8, that they're in bed by 7:30. So if you've got a child that's still napping, that's a little trickier. I try to have naps all done by 3 p.m. And if you have afternoon errands that you have to do, please save yourself and put a child next to the baby so that the child was always responsible for keeping the baby awake. Like always. Always. Our children would be like, I don't want to sit next to the baby. That means I have to pay attention and keep the baby awake. Yep. But keeping the baby awake will help you when it comes to dinner time and then getting them all to bed. With that too, when your kids are in bed between 7 and 8, then you and your partner have some evening time. You can decompress. Don't start any big projects. Make sure you go to bed at a reasonable time so you can get up before your children. It's so, so important. Okay, now let's talk about holding the space.
Holding the space. So,
what are your favorite parts about holding the space, do you think? Because I think moms and dads hold the space very differently.
Yes.
And the best thing mom can do is like relax and not fuss at dad about, unless dad is getting out his phone constantly to hold the space. That's not holding the space. That's babysitting.
Yeah.
But holding the space is this this concept of being energetically present to those that are there. So your children know, like, remember the last time you got on the phone, you're talking to somebody and then like the dog barfed and the, you know, kid's got a bloody nose all of a sudden and there's a poopy diaper and all the things fall apart when you get on the phone. It's because your energy is pulled away.
Yeah. So
to hold space for your children means that you're energetically present. So what we do is we always know that somebody's holding the space. Like if I have to get up and go do something, I'll say, hey, are you good? And he'll say, yes, I'm good. And I'll go. And vice versa. I was thinking about all of the fights that happen when you don't hold space. You always know when you're not holding space, because if your kids are fighting, you're not holding space.
Something very random usually.
Well, yeah, because they don't, you know, children are, I believe, inherently good. Yeah. They don't mean to make things harder. They don't mean to make you mad. You know, they don't mean to do that. What happens when we are usually frustrated or when they have trouble with each other is they don't feel our energy there, and that's how they feel safety. And when you don't hold the space, they don't feel safe. And that's how they rub up against each other the wrong way, or they're, you pulled my hair, you took my toy, all of that stuff. So that doesn't mean that you're a helicopter parent, because we definitely want to teach them to sort of work some things out on their own. But there's a big difference between space holding and not, and like feeling it. So if you've got trouble with children fighting, and again, please remember, we have 5. And there were some noisy times in our house, but they were always noisier when we were not holding the space.
And they knew we were.
Always. They knew we weren't paying attention.
And sometimes we are not holding the space because one child is demanding all the attention, and then the others are like, oh, well, this one's being naughty. They're not looking at what I'm doing.
Absolutely. There's that one too.
Yep.
So that space holding thing, I think, is really important to keep in mind if you're having a lot of conflict in your home, because that piece right there, your children need your energy. Not all day long. You need breaks for sure. And that's why, I always suggest having quiet time after lunch, or, getting up before your kids so that you can have that space of time where you are alone, and putting your kids to bed when they need to be put to bed so that you can have that time alone. You're not continually holding it all the time.
Absolutely.
So it is okay if you're not good at it at first. All of us, it's a practice, right? Like, it should just be like, parenting should be called a practice, because you never get it right 100% of the time. You're always practicing at it, and you're always like seeking to do better. And so with that, holding the space is something that takes time. And again, remember, mom and dad hold the space very differently. And if you have a partner that maybe is struggling with holding the space without like getting out their phone and going, hey, look at this video, then give them ideas. Like, hey, they really love these books. What if I keep these books in a basket right here? So when you're holding the space, that's their icebreaker. Because often, you know how to play, but often the other parent doesn't know how to play. And so we want to break that ice down for them so that they can actually have fun holding the space. And when I think one of the most frustrating things is when I hear moms say that dad is babysitting. And I go, he's not babysitting.
He's supposed to be parenting.
He's parenting. And that would go for any other parent situation. Moms and dads do not babysit. Don't use that terminology ever. Grandparents babysit. Babysitters babysit. Nannies babysit. Moms and dads do not babysit. They hold space. So keep that in mind as you're working to change your mindset, working to change how you speak about things, and really get excited about holding space, because honestly, holding space is so much better than the alternative of having everybody fighting and arguing.
Because then you can make the space what you want it to be.
Yes, absolutely. That is so, so, so true. We come under scrutiny from a lot of people that are friends, people that are family, people that think we're just plain nuts. And do I care about that? Does it bother me? Or do I feel really, centered in where I am? And so I want to ask you, how are you doing with that? Do you feel centered about where you are? If you, if somebody came up to you in public, somebody you didn't know, and said, I need you to defend this right now, could you defend it? Could you say, yeah, this is why I do what I do? I am confident in the things that I do in all of the areas of my life. And I know that I'm also responsible for the things that I do. So when we're confident and we understand our space, then we're also responsible. And that responsibility is something that we pass on to our children, and helping them to understand that, helping them how to be conscious and being responsible. So I just want to ask you to ponder that this week as you go through the week and you find yourself doing things that maybe are against the norm, or maybe it is with the norm, and ask yourself, why do I do that? Why do I choose to go that direction? What makes this the right direction for our family?